I'll start off by saying I definitely wish we were playing today. I think that was everyone's goal and objective, and obviously we're sitting here and we're talking now. Looking at this year, I think about continuity. I think about injuries and how the role that they played, but at the end of the day, in this league, nobody feels sorry for you based off of injuries. You got to anticipate that, and we've been doing it long enough to know like those are always going to be a factor. So those are never excuses. Those are just some things that I thought were challenges this year, and I was particularly proud of our group, coaching staff, our players, guys that stepped up and really took advantage of the opportunities that came from those injuries. And I can go down the line to Veet and Bruno and Kobe and Mo and those guys experiencing injuries themselves. Like we've seen a comeuppance in Garrison and just a number of guys that I was really, really pleased with. And the coaching staff that has surrounded them and maintained a level of competitiveness. Competing is a huge word for us, and that was something that I never felt wavered. And I really thought our group, regardless of the lineups that were out there, regardless of the number of different lineups that we saw day in and day out, was something that was really good, really positive. But now we're in this space where we'll take a little bit of time, allow the season to kind of get to a more neutral state, and we'll begin our process, and our methodology of how we're going to continuously improve. And that's just the way we're going to operate moving forward. So much to reflect on, but at the end of the day, we know we've got work to do. So with that, I'll open up with any questions.
Yeah, I was going to say part of that reflection might be looking at not just even the roster that you had this past year, but how much of it has rolled over the last 3 years maybe, and how many changes that you guys might need to make in order to have that improvement happen.
Yes, our group, who I love and trust, we're gonna take some time to really hammer that out. That process is a process of first just stopping, making sure that we're in a state of neutrality, and making sure that we're in a group setting to where we can begin to label and really dissect some of the key features of this season. And then from there, it's a discovery process. And from that discovery, now we put and implement a plan in place on how we're going to get better and how that roster will ultimately shape up going into next season.
And how prepared do you feel that, if somebody approached you this off season, maybe asking to be moved somewhere else, or not any specific person, but just in general, if somebody's saying that maybe this situation isn't necessarily working for me, how do you guys approach that and have those open conversations to kind of help everybody come out, I guess, in some way a winner?
Well, part of that is just in the forefront is always communicating with guys and having them not be caught blindsided, but communicating kind of where we're at in general. And those conversations, of course, happen amongst the league, and I think we're always, in positions to where we would know how to handle those situations.
The last time we spoke to you was after the trade deadline. You guys decided not to make any moves. Between that time and now, do you feel like you've learned more about this team, or you kind of already had an understanding to go into the offseason to make some of those decisions?
Some understanding. We definitely learned a lot. We're consistently preaching growth mindset, and so we're always on the lookout for opportunities to get better. And in order to do that, you have to be able to sit and obviously watch and then have those discussions moving forward. And since then, a bunch of time has passed, and variables have changed for sure, and new data comes in, so you're always taking new data and trying to figure out what's it going to look like moving forward. So certainly a lot has been learned, not just with players, but the entirety of the league and where the league is heading and how different teams are anticipating and preparing for a new cap environment. I think that's something that we've been doing as well, but to kind of see how teams have positioned themselves for this summer is interesting.
What needs to change for you guys to be a championship caliber team? Because you guys have made, over the past couple of years, coaching changes. So at what point do you really just start to look maybe at the players that you've had?
Yeah, I mean, it's been happening, and it will continue to happen. Just making those changes, we never want that to just be arbitrary. Never want to do anything that is whimsical, but well thought out. And for us, it's kind of what I mentioned. It's about taking the time to reflect on this group and reflect on the areas in which we can continuously improve. And it's not a question of like when. It's like a matter of we'll always be doing that. It's the nature of our business, and that's part of my job, to lead a group that's going to have to do that.
So do you feel like there maybe needs to be like a big shift or addition to the team really to be able to take that next step?
I think we're going to learn that in time. I think those are going to be things that we're going to discover here in the coming weeks and months. The immediacy of the draft is coming up as well, so we've got to be able to navigate that while also continuously building out a roster and how we're going to construct that. But we're always going to look for areas to improve. Is it big? Is it small? At this point, it's hard to tell. I trust our group when we sit down and go through that process.
A common theme seemed to kind of be that, while this group may be a good group and they might like each other off the court, it just didn't seem like they could figure out how to collectively play together. So how do you, I guess, find that balance of maybe finding the right personalities, finding the right skill set of players to kind of help this team be able to play collectively well?
We are always looking to improve upon connectivity, selflessness. Those are two key themes for our group, and the type of culture and the type of personnel that we want in our environment. And in doing so, the way we prepare for that is by defining what that looks like for us in particular. And then whether it's, right now it's going to be the draft or getting into free agency or getting into trades or whatnot, you're always gathering intel and scouting different players that will exhibit those levels of character and connectedness and selflessness.
What's something, maybe how do you define that as far as the selflessness and the connectivity that they might display? What questions do you ask, I guess?
Well, I would define it as the move from me to we. And apart from just asking it, it's watching actions and how guys operate with one another.
What have you seen this season that gives you confidence that just Trey and DeJounte can work well together moving forward?
Well, those guys, they're incredibly competitive. There's plenty of moments where I can point to and say, like, hey, it looks really good right now. And you're always going to take those moments and try to figure out, okay, how can we continuously get better? And it doesn't just come down to those two, right? Like it's something where you're going to look at the entire team, and then like those are going to be a focus. And then we're also going to look at like, okay, what's the rest of the team going to look like? What's this roster going to have to continuously improve upon, not just them?
As you look at the defense from over the course of the season, from October to April, how did you see it grow or change or adapt, and what do you think it has to do moving forward?
Yeah, those are going to be that's a good question, because that's the questions we'll go into this offseason looking at. We'll look at the data, we'll look at the analytics, we'll go back and we'll watch film, and we'll see what the various lineups that we did have, what were those groups doing, what were the contexts in which those certain actions were occurring. And I think from there we'll be able to have a clearer path moving forward on how we can continuously improve defense.
If you look at a basketball game 10 years ago or 10 years before that, styles adapt and grow. Mm-hmm. And if you try to plan a team that's going to win in the future, what do you think is sort of the next step of evolution of basketball in the way that the game changes, so that you can sort of anticipate how you want your team to look as that question makes any sense at all?
It's a very nuanced and thorough question for sure. It's I think there are always going to be principles that are timeless. Size, length, athletic ability, BBIQ, things that are, of course, important to many teams, but important to us as well. As new information comes along, just in general, I'm always a believer that you're now responsible for that. So as the game evolves and teams get smarter and new data becomes available, and no matter what you're doing, you learn more about that, you become responsible for that. So now how are you going to take that to get better at your craft? And as much as we want to focus on physical features, because those are very important in this league, it's also diving deep into the intangibles and being able to put the mind around those physical features to bring them both to a point of getting better and improving. So there's always going to be things that you look at and like those are features that usually are successful in this league, but of course there's always outliers as well. So that's what makes scouting extremely tough, especially in the draft process.
I'm curious, I've heard you talk before about Hawks DNA and competitiveness and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Clint and Bogue in particular were talking about just issues they felt were going on with chemistry and maybe not an unwilling sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of what does that say about what's happened with, in the players that have come in here and that you guys have acquired, that as much as you're putting an emphasis on connectivity, that seems to be an issue?
Well, I'd have to go back and look at exactly what they said on that, but I do know that we're always striving to get better in those areas. And certain character traits, if you can move from it just being something that's innate, like this is a person that's born more patient or more competitive, rather let's look at those as skills to be developed and putting players and people in positions to where they can improve upon those and practice those more and more. So when you look at the start of the season to the end, like, can we be more connected? Can we be more unselfish? Can we be more competitive? That would be how I would look at that.
I guess, so so it's not necessarily that our filter is we're going to bring in guys that have those traits already, but we're willing to take chances on guys and believing that they can become more sacrificial or connected. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's a good question. It's really, no, we do want to have that as a filter. I think there is a baseline threshold of which you can look at not just one or two different character components, but a majority of different things that we have determined that are important. And you're discerning how best to move forward with that and if they can enhance those properties going forward. So it's a bit of a both and right there. Yes, we're going to use that, and we're going to use that as a filter on who we bring into the organization, but then we're also going to use that in a way to create development plans for guys that are specific and customized.
One physical feature that can't be denied is just height and size, and
Yeah.
having that on your team. How big of a focus is that for you guys moving forward to potentially add that to the team?
It'll be something we look at. It's not just going to come down to that. I think there's a number of different things that will come up when we go through our assessment stage. But yeah, typically in this league, size definitely helps, and that's just the nature of the system in which we play basketball.
Given the circumstances of what is going to happen tonight with Sacramento and how that could relay a pick to you guys, how big is an impact of that pick coming to you this season in your plans, or do you kind of view that as more of a bonus thing, or something that you how big of an impact is that pick relaying to you guys this year, part of your plan?
Well, the beauty of our group is we try to prepare for all scenarios. So to look at that, one, it's out of our control. Like, they're going to win or lose, and that will determine ultimately where that pick goes. So if we get the pick, great. What does that look like? How are we going to leverage that asset moving forward to build out our team? And if we don't get it, okay, we'll prepare for it next year, and it still becomes an asset for our future.
You have a bunch of young guys who didn't necessarily have huge playing time this year due to injuries and all kinds of things. How do you approach not only the summer but going into next year with Kobe and AJ, who was going in and out, played a lot more last year, being banged up? Like, I know it's a lot of focus on the guys who play more minutes, but the young guys who are already in the pipeline, how do you kind of navigate those guys?
You're right. Those guys have been in and out for various reasons, and I was most proud of just their resilience. Like, every single one of those guys went through a pit, and they came out the other side, I thought, better. Not that you ever want to have to go through those, but the way that they approached it, the way that they showed humility through it, and the discovery of different things about themselves in that process, I thought was great. So if you project out into the future, what we're going to continuously do with them is maintain that mindset, maintain the fact that there are going to be things that are not in your control, and you're not going to be able to prepare for exactly what they are, but you can prepare for adversity. So what tools are we going to give them through that? What habits are they going to have to add to their routines day in and day out towards becoming the best version of themselves? So early on, and this was especially in this last draft, a part of like the character that we want in this group. It's not something that's perfect where all of a sudden like you're the perfect person. It's more about how have you responded to these situations before, because that gives us an opportunity to then project out how you respond in the future. And to have a growth mindset that those guys do have is really important. It's very important for us. Continuously improving is a common theme here. As well as the competitiveness and perseverance and just grit. And those guys showed a lot of that, and I'm super proud of how they did that. And I would bank on the fact that they won't stop doing that in the future.
What went into the decision around V and the conversion and non-conversion? A lot of talk about that at the end of the season. Like, how do you evaluate that kind of thing? And obviously he becomes a free agent now. How do you sort of navigate that this summer season?
Veet had an incredible end of the year. Very similar to your last question about a guy's journey. Different pit stages that they go through. I mean, he was here, then he wasn't here, and now he's back. And he showed us a lot of excitement towards the end of the season and a lot of really good play. And it wasn't an easy decision with how we came to it, but leaning on our process and methodology and how we got there, I'm more than confident that that was the right decision. And, really trusting our group on getting there. So, love Veet, want to see if we can do something for the future here with him. But a lot went into that. And a lot went into his game. And a lot of coaches spent a lot of time with him. The time that he spent in College Park with Coach Ryan and his staff and the group that was there all goes into that. So that's a great story today. And, as he continues into the future, hopefully become a greater one.
Trey said that he, likes being here, but he also wants to win. How much do you see his future here being with the Hawks moving forward?
Trey's the ultimate competitor. He really is. Without a doubt, I know he wants to win. And, it never comes down to just one guy. Because as great as Trey is, he is a fantastic basketball player, all-star caliber player. He knows and we know that it's going to take more than one. So, we'll look at this roster and continuously build out, because we all want the same thing at the end of the day. We want to win.
Landry, the saying is that hindsight is 20/20. Just wondering, looking back on the season and knowing what you know now, are there moves that you wish you would have made, or maybe moves you wish you guys didn't make, or how do you kind of reflect upon a season like that?
The way I look at that is, you can always look back and say, I should do this, should do that, but there would be no growth opportunity if you always got it right. I think it's the shift from, if it can't be perfect, then learn from it and then progress and practice whatever it is that you learn from that. So I think we look back at seasons like this and any season, and instead of judging it successful, unsuccessful, I judge it as important. It's very important for us to go through a number of different things, adversity, the highs, the lows, and then taking the time to stop and reflect on, why was there a success there? Why wasn't there success there? And then our commitment to excellence and commitment to getting better. That's within our control, and that's what's going to position us going forward for the big results that we ultimately want at the end of the day, because results are important, and we do want to win, but we also put a huge emphasis on the how.
Are there moves you already know you want to make? I'm not asking any names.
Nope.
Thanks, Landry.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Landry.